Okay, so a little bit of housekeeping before we start. I have found myself referring people to Richard Rohr's book, Falling Upward. How many of you have read Falling Upward? Any of you read Falling Upward? Okay, Doug, Danielle. Okay, you have too, Becky? And I haven't read it in so long that I figured I should probably read it again just to, if I keep giving it to people, I should have a fresh idea what the heck is in there. And it's pretty good. I'm wondering if you all would like to dive into that as our next book. I think it'll follow along.
Yes.
Okay, great. It'll follow along really well with what we've been doing here with the Way of the Heart and also with these desert stories. And so great. So let's, I will, when I send this recording to you tomorrow, I'll send a link to the book and so you can pick it up and we'll dive into that in maybe a couple of weeks, something like that. We'll see how long it takes us to get through some of these stories. And I have the stories that we're going to read tonight, I'll have on screen. And I sent a file to you. Did you all get that file by any chance?
Yeah.
Some of you did? Okay. And so you can, if you got it printed out, great, you can read off that. Otherwise, we'll read off the screen, which I know is not quite as easy. But we'll do that tonight. And then I'll figure out, once we get past this file, there's a lot more stories that we can read from the Wisdom of the Desert itself. So either I'll scan those pages and have them up on the screen as well. Because, I mean, obviously you can get the book if you want to, but I don't expect you to get it just for what we're doing. So we can just read off the screen if that's okay. But all right. Any questions or comments or anything you want to talk about before we dive in? All right, well, let's share the screen. Yeah, we just lost Jerry. See how that works right as we're supposed to get started. She's back.
Dying. My computer's dying. I've got to get it plugged in.
What does your sweater say?
Oh, Mary Bright.
Aw.
Oh, okay.
My computer's dying. I'm going to plug it in.
All right, you do that. I won't mess with you anymore. All right, so can you all see this?
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, writing's kind of small, but I can see it.
Yeah, well, I can. Let's see. I can make it more bigger. And then we'll have to scroll around to get to it, but there you go.
That's better.
Okay, so these are coming from different places. Some of these are coming from the Wisdom of the Desert. Some of them are coming from a collection from Paul Coelho, which he's a Brazilian, great wisdom writer. So we'll be kind of moving around here. So this first one, The Middle Way, these are kind of my favorites that I had collected. And if you have this file called Serious Joy, I put this together years ago from a lot of different writing. And if you get a chance to read through it, there's some great stories here. They're not all from the wisdom tradition. And we may go ahead and read a few of them outside of the wisdom tradition, just because they're such great stories and they really do illustrate important points. So this one here, Middle Way. The monk Lucas was walking through a village accompanied by a disciple. An old man asked a man from Skeet, "Holy man, how can I come closer to God?" He says, "Enjoy yourself, praise the Creator with your joy." And the two men went on their way. Just then a younger man came over. "What must I do to come closer to God?" Wait for it. "Enjoy yourself less," said Lucas. When the young man left, the disciple commented, "It seems to me that you're not sure whether or not one should enjoy oneself." And he replies, "A spiritual journey is a bridge with no railings across an abyss. If someone is too near the right-hand side, I tell him left a bit. And if he approaches the left side, I say right a bit. The extremes veer us away from the path." I have, you probably heard me say over and over again that the truth is not at the extremes. This is a really important thing for us to keep in mind. The truth is not at the extremes. It seems like right now in our culture, we're seeing nothing but the extremes. And so it is so important for us to realize, if you are speaking to someone, listening to someone who is occupying that extreme space, then you already know they're coming from a place of imbalance. And so, it's just something for you to know, so that as you're processing what they're saying, or you're dealing with the personality, it's just good to know that that's where they're coming from. People who are coming from the extreme can be very convincing, and they can speak so loudly and adamantly that that you will wonder if you're the one who's crazy or not. So it's just something to keep in mind when you're dealing with extreme personalities and extreme positions. And then as far as what we are doing in terms of watching ourselves and discerning where we are at, are we still occupying somewhere near the middle space? Are we still occupying the liminal space? And how can we pull back? The other thing that's another important implication here is that we all need accountability partners in some way, shape, or form. We need someone who can help us when we start veering one side or the other, that they can and have permission to speak into our lives and give us some advice, tell us what they're seeing, so that we may not see it as early as somebody else does, that we're starting to move into a place where we're in need of a course correction. That middle way is so important. Moderation in all things came from the Greeks. That's another way of probably saying the same thing.
Including moderation.
Including moderation. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts on this? Comments?
Well, Dave, you have permission from me to speak into my life if you see me venturing off.
Why, thank you. I appreciate
Just wanted to give you a heads up. All you guys do. I'm fine with that, and I welcome it.
Well, good.
Frank. No, just kidding.
I was waiting for that, Danielle. Thank you. You didn't
Just
disappoint.
kidding, sweetie. Just kidding.
Yeah, you knew that was coming right there, Frankie.
Oh, yeah, no,
look
I
at
was
this,
about to say,
Frankie,
except for me, right, Danielle, but she beat me to the punch.
Okay, so now speaking of extreme positions, have you looked at Frank's new name on his screen?
I saw that. I love it.
What is it? Oh.
All right. Frank, we've been meaning to talk to you about your extreme position.
Yes. Is this an intervention tonight?
It always is for you, Frank.
It could be.
Oh, that's funny.
Oh, hey, by the way, if you're lucky, we got Savannah possibly joining later on tonight. I told her I got my study. She goes, well, can I still come over? I'm like, yeah. I go, but I'm gonna, I'm on my study, but yeah, you can join in, sit and listen, do whatever you want.
Okay.
Yeah, so feel free to attack me, y'all, so she can see how well loved I am.
Well, this will be great. We'll have two extreme positions in one little screen.
Oh.
It would be great to see her. Hopefully she will come soon. All right, let's look at the town on the far side. A hermit from the monastery of Skiri went to Abbot Theodore. I know precisely the objective of life. I know what God asks of man, and I know the best way of serving him. Even so, I am incapable of doing everything I should in order to serve the Lord. Abbot Theodore remained silent for a time, and finally he said, you know that there is a city on the far side of the ocean, but you haven't yet found the ship, nor have you loaded your bags, nor crossed the sea. Why spend time commenting on what it is like or how one should walk through its streets? Knowing the objective of life or recognizing the best way of serving the Lord is not enough. Put into practice that which you think, and the way will be revealed all by itself. This is one of the biggest concepts that I think that we need to tackle. There are so many people that, and I'm included, I really thought that I could read enough books and get into myself everything that I needed to be able to live a spiritual life. And from the safety of my armchair, I wanted to be able to do this, right? And there is no way to do this. Talk therapy can only take you so far. You know, the reading can only take you so far. And especially when it comes to contemplative practice, you know, it's such a folly to think that you can read about a musical instrument and think you can play it, you know, or anything that takes immersion, anything that is actual activity. And so all of this speculating, all of this theorizing, and this is the problem I think that's happened in the West here, especially since the Reformation, is that we've become so intellectualized that we think that we can just read the scriptures and get them all exactly interpreted correctly, and then we're all fine. Everything is fine. We've got it all together. But until it's put into practice, nothing is really happening. And so this idea of the town on the far side is another just great illustration of that point. But I find myself so often talking to people who are really struggling with contemplative practice, but the point is that they're not really practicing it. They're still struggling with the concepts. And the beauty of contemplative practice is that you don't really need to understand the concepts. You just need to show up for the work. And as he says, the way will be revealed all by itself. Knowing the objective of life or recognizing the best way of serving the Lord is not enough. Put into practice that which you think, and the way will be revealed all by itself. In other words, we only have to do enough study to understand the basic concepts of the practice itself. And most importantly, to minimize the sense of risk enough that we're willing to actually take those first steps. That's it. And then taking the first steps, you know, that's it. I think it was Lao Tzu who said that the path is you know, the path is created as you walk on it, basically. It was something like that. I'm paraphrasing badly, but it was something like that. And so this is the idea here. We have to walk the path. Jesus is the way and the truth and the life. You know, it's not about thinking right thoughts about Jesus. It's about actually walking the way that Jesus walked, walking the way of Jesus that reveals things. So this point cannot be made strong enough. Any thoughts on this little ditty?
Agree?
What's that?
Agree.
Agree? So you can see that there's certain principles that are being hit by each one of these stories. The first one is about moderation, you know, not trying to hang out at the extremes and taking away the virtue of the extremes, because sometimes we think the more extreme, the more passionate, the more this or that, you know, the more right on we are. But to realize that there is this passionate middle. The middle is not milquetoast. The middle is not passionless, but it is the middle way, and it's not an extreme. And now this idea that we have to put into practice that which we think we believe. We cannot know God, we cannot know ourselves until we're actually in motion. And that idea of the spirit being in motion, I think, is also another image that we can deal with.
It's being more intuitive, you know,
Say again, Frank?
being more intuitive, like, you know, intuitive learning, instead of, you know, trying to pour over the manual. Apple has always been kind of noted for, you know, you can kind of intuitively get through Apple without even reading instructions.
Mm-hmm. Except for all the hidden features that you can't find anywhere else.
Well, that's why you just keep playing.
No, that's when you go to the internet and find all the other people who have played enough to find the hidden features and tell you about them. But I get your point, man. Absolutely. You know, and that's something we talked about when we talked about Epic. Remember, experiential, participatory, image-based, and communal. You know, that idea of experiential. You give a cell phone to a younger generation or a kid, they're not looking for the manual. Of course, Apple isn't even giving you manuals anymore, but they just start pushing buttons. You know, us boomers, we're all about, okay, where's the instruction manual? Because we're all about propositional truth, not experiential learning. And so it's a very different mindset to be epic. And of course, Leonard Sweet's whole point was that the younger people are processing information epically. And our generation and the modern generation for the last 500 years has been the opposite of epic. We've been propositional instead of experiential. We've been, what's the epic, participatory, representational instead of participatory. And we've been word-based instead of image-based, and individualistic instead of communal. So if we want to speak to the younger people, then we're going to have to be epic too, and start to disseminate information in an epic way so that they can receive it. And then, of course, for me, the real light bulb went on when I realized the ancients were epic too. Our scriptures were written from an epic point of view. And so we're only going to get out of them what was put in when we enter that epic mindset as well, which is all of those things: experiential, participatory, image-based, and communal. Otherwise, we're not going to get it. And that's what's happened. We've interpreted the scriptures through this completely different mindset, and we've gotten a completely different message. And that's what needs to change. So how about behave like others? I love this one. Abbot Pastor was walking with a monk from Skidi when they were invited for a meal. The host, honored by the holy men's presence, served only the finest dishes. However, the monk was fasting. As soon as the food arrived, he took one pea, and chewed it slowly. He only ate that one pea during the whole meal. As they left, Abbot Pastor called him, "Brother, when you pay a visit, do not render your holiness an offense. The next time you're fasting, do not accept an invitation to dine." The monk understood what Abbot Pastor had said. From then on, whenever he was with others, he behaved as they did. Someone break that one down for me a little bit. What do you see in there?
Not eating any more hot sauce, Dave, no matter what you say.
Well, I would take it like what I did when I used to go to China, when my agent, who's Chinese, is also Muslim. So during Ramadan, I would join in with Ramadan, even though, you know, they'd say, "Oh, you're Christian, you don't have to do that." I'm like, well, we're family. And since I'm here in your home, I cannot eat if you're not. So if you're not eating, I won't eat. And so just kind of, you know, to me, you know, anytime anybody invites me over to their home or cooks for me or does anything for me, I'm always, you know, gracious, eat it, thankful. You know, just, you know, when in Rome, do as the Romans.
Okay.
I saw it more as, you know, that don't let the right hand know what the left hand is doing kind of thing, where you're showing up to somebody's house and you're presenting in this pious manner, instead of, you know, I think I'd be even, but I personally wouldn't have a problem if the person showed up to dinner and just didn't eat because they're fasting, but they're there to spend time. I think I'd prefer that over eating one pea. But yeah, it's kind of, at least the way it's presented, it sounded like he made a presentation out of just eating the one pea. And, you know, there's something a little bit prideful, I suppose, in there somewhere. Or I don't know if pride is the right word, but yeah.
Well, you're actually going where I was going to go. What do you think that monk's motivation was for doing what he did?
To be
Best
recognized.
to worst motivation. What kind of spin can you put on it?
Well, to be recognized for fasting.
Yeah.
Sticking to his principles.
Mhm.
What was that, Kathy?
Sticking to his principles.
Okay. So that's the best possible spin we can put on it, right? That
Mhm.
he was really sticking to his principles, sticking to the fast. And then on the other hand, we can say that he was trying to make a show, that
Right.
make sure everybody knew that he was fasting, right?
Uh,
Or anywhere, I suppose, in between, or a combination of the two.
right.
Either way, he gets reprimanded. It doesn't really matter, you know, because he insulted the host. The host put on the show and everything for these people because he was so thrilled to have them, and he didn't partake.
Mm.
And so the idea is here, don't let your holiness become an offense.
Mm.
In other words, what is the most important thing? Is the most important thing that you keep the fast? Or is the most important thing that you leave your host better than you found him or her?
Well, I find myself thinking about the fact that we're, a recovery community, and sometimes you visit your host, and they might be having a couple of cold ones, and you got to do what you got to do.
Okay, but in a situation like that, you're not going to consume the alcohol, but you can probably drink something else, right?
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
And would that be an offense, I suppose?
Right.
Yeah. Jerry?
It's interesting. This my son-in-law likes to fast, and my daughter will make this fabulous meal. And it happened the other night. I took care of the kids, and I got invited to dinner, and she made this wonderful meal. I mean, and took her time and made this beautiful meal. And he has made the decision, that he's going to not eat meat, and he's not going to, and he ordered takeout food and had it delivered to the house. And I'm sorry, it's like that to me. I don't know. Is that? I mean, I had a hard time with it. I did. And the other thing is he loves super. He's Latino, and he loves spicy, super hot food. And she'll make this beautiful meal, and then all this hot sauce is put on it, everything. I mean, I don't care what it is, mashed potatoes, the meat, the whatever. And I'm like, she one time she said, could you just try the food first just to see if you like it before you put that stuff on it?
You tell her to do this. This is what I did to my roommate one time, because he would do that and would get me angry that he wouldn't eat my food without first globbing on a whole bunch of hot sauce. So I made like a hot dish, and I made two of them, one for me and one for him. And I really made it really, really, really hot. I mean, ridiculously hot. So then he goes in like normal, doesn't even taste it. Long story short, he had diarrhea that night. So I really had a lot.
That's not leaving people better than you found them.
Right.
That's what I did. I taught him a wonderful lesson in life.
One of my story, I mean, this is way back, my first husband, and I am making my first Thanksgiving dinner. And I am so excited, I'm new wife, and I make my first Thanksgiving dinner for him, the turkey, the gravy, the everything. And he sits down and puts ketchup on everything. And I got up from the table and cried. So, I mean, what? I'm having a hard time with this one. I'm having a real hard time. I was so mad. How dare you? Why did I bother? And he put ketchup on everything. So I don't know. I'm struggling with this one. I don't know.
Hard to give thanks, huh?
Yeah, it was real hard to give thanks. I cried. I was so upset.
Well, I find ketchup highly offensive myself. So on anything.
On anything.
Ketchup is just wrong.
It's the fact that I made the meal and went to such great effort, and you're going to ruin it by putting ketchup on it? I mean, come on. I don't know. I'm struggling with this one. I don't know whether the monk was right or the brother was right. I don't know.
Well, actually, you're sort of siding with the brother, right? Abit Pastor.
Yeah.
You're saying
Yeah.
behave as others behave.
As others behave. If
But
somebody
But I personally, I disagree with that.
It's
If I'm
about
on a
time,
diet-
William. Well, I was
I mean-
waiting for this.
If I'm on a diet and I go and visit somebody's house, and let's say when I was doing my plant-based diet, and I go and visit somebody's place, I'm I'm not going to force them to, eat a plant-based thing. But if I don't want to eat meat, I'm not eating meat, and if they happen to take offense to that, then I will offend them with a smile on my face. But I see nothing wrong with that, but I do understand the message I think the pastor is trying to communicate there.
And what is it? What is the message he's trying to communicate?
Well, I think at the heart of it, it's, don't allow your piety or your, how you present spiritually to make other people uncomfortable, I suppose. At least that's the way I'm hearing it. But behave like others is terrible advice in, as a normal go-to position, and, I can speak for my Mexican friends, I have my Mexican friends who puts hot sauce on everything, like their mother's favorite dish gets the hot sauce before it gets the fork, and that is what it is, and and behave like others. Like when I go to Mexican houses, I am not going to douse my food with hot sauce
No.
because it's not the same thing for me. So yeah, I think behave like others, make others feel comfortable, but behave like others is not where I'd want to go there.
Well, we may be getting a little too literal here.
Yeah.
I think we are.
So the whole point here is the same point that Jesus was making when he said that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. All right? Think about that for a second.
Mhm.
In other words, when your religious rituals and your religious practices take precedence over just the love and the decency that we're supposed to show each other, then you've lost everything. You've lost absolutely everything. What is fasting supposed to do but make you more present, make you more available, make you more aware of the people around you and the relationships that you have? If it's doing the exact opposite, hurting the feelings and breaking down relationships around you, then you've lost it completely. And so it's trying to give us back our perspective. All the religious practices, all the things that we do are supposed to foster a sense of love and caring and decent behavior toward each other. And if it's not doing that, then they're absolutely worthless. And you could basically jettison all of your religious practices if you're just acting lovingly and decently to each other. I mean, that's the whole point here. All of this is based on love. And if there is not love, if your practices have taken you position over relationship, then you've absolutely lost your way. And so that's the whole point.
Dave, you just said something that reminded me of a line I heard yesterday. It was a quote from Carl Jung that said, religion was created so that men will stop having religious experiences. And I didn't quite know what to make of that, but you just said something that reminded me of that there.
Well, I need more context for where he's going with that, but just hearing it, to me, it's a very, ironic remark that basically religion does have the effect of keeping people, it creates a glass ceiling that disallows people from having the very religious experiences that we're supposed to have, usually by fostering and creating and fostering the need for certainty. Because as soon as we move into certainty, then we've lost the ability to have the kind of religious experience.
Baby, you okay?
All right, Danielle.
I don't think she meant that one for you,
sorry.
Dave.
You're on camera, dear. Oh, it's funny. But does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that may be where he's going, although I'm not really sure just out of context that way. But that absolutely is true, that what religious practice is supposed to do is usher us into the mystery, usher us into that numinous awe where that kind of encounter can take place. And yet what is really done is to take away the possibility of having that kind of encounter.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that whatever we put in place for ourselves ritualistically, theologically, is feeding the love and the decency that we have toward each other, and in no way compromising it. And so behave like others, yes, it's a very narrow look at it. You know, when in Rome, do as the Romans do type of idea, but yeah, you can go way too far with this. And as far as you, if you have a plant-based diet and you're going to visit someone and they're serving meat, then, you know, obviously there's nothing wrong with that. Let them know it beforehand though, you know, that you're not eating that, so that they can just be ready for it. You know, and maybe they have an alternate dish for you. They double up on the potatoes. I don't know, but if you know, if you work it out so that it's not an offense, then it's not an offense. And it's
But I think I am being way too literal in my thinking of it, in that, you know, what's on the menu kind of approach.
Yeah. And the same thing with Jerry's issues, you know, that was off the religious point, but it makes another point about, you know, how do you honor the host?
Yeah.
You know, and you know, just there's now we're back to just decency and love, right, Jerry?
Right.
Right.
Mhm.
You know, I was so proud of my daughter. I had for New Year's, I think I told you all of that last night. I had the family over for dinner, and my little 4-year-old granddaughter, you know, we said what we were having, and she said, "I'm not eating that." I mean, just like that. And my daughter, I thought she handled it well. She said, "You don't even know whether you like it or not. You know, so why don't we try it and see if you like it, and, you know, at least taste it. Nana has prepared this meal for us, and you are going to try it." And I thought that was fair. You know, that to me, that was fair. And she did. And sure enough, she ate, cleared her plate, you know, but it was like, well, at least try it, you know, and be kind to your host. And she said, "Nana made this meal just for us, and you are going to try it." So, you know, I thought that was a nice, to me, that was a nice compromise, or a nice balance, finding that balance, and not the extreme of, you know, force feeding her, you know, that extreme, or giving in to her, that extreme. She found a middle ground of, you're going to honor your Nana and you're going to try it. And sure enough, she ended up loving all of it and ate every bit of it.
That's
With or without ketchup.
No ketchup.
Now,
No.
wait a minute. Where did the ketchup guy get his ketchup? Did he bring it with him?
No, this is my husband that did it to me. My first husband, when we were first married, and I did our first Thanksgiving.
Oh, well, that's why he was your first husband.
That's right.
He had packets of ketchup in his pocket. He would bring to dinner.
I knew we were in trouble at that point.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah. Well,
Anyway.
I am a hot
So-
sauce guy. I love hot sauce. Basically, I see food as a hot sauce delivery device, but I wouldn't do that, you know, to somebody's dinner, you know.
You know, Dave, there's the other side of this too. I've seen it as where the host kind of stresses out over, I guess, in your, you know, in your family, you get to know everybody and what they're allergic to, or what they can or cannot eat, and all of this. And so we have in our family, we have people that are gluten-free, then we have people that are dairy-free. So, you know, trying to put a Thanksgiving meal together for this is crazy. It's insane, because it's like, okay, we have to make a separate dressing because it can't have butter in it for this person, and this person's gluten-free, so the bread has to be, you know. So, you know, we kind of like flip ourselves around on the opposite side and try to, you know, I guess over stress out, because I think there's sort of become an expectation in the family that we're going to just cover all the bases for everybody. I'm getting to the point where I'm going to say, you bring your own food next time.
Exactly.
That's what we do.
I can't make 3 different kind of dressings, you know, or whatever. So it's just, it can be two-sided on that. And then it puts the burden on the host, who you're supposed to honor.
What is happening to us? We can't eat anything anymore. What's going on?
I know. What is it?
Go
No salt,
potluck.
no this, no that.
But I can honestly say that with our family, there's not too much of that going on. I mean, they just put the food down and you eat it. You know, it's
You're
all
very
pretty
lucky.
basic
Good for you.
stuff, but you know, gosh, that would be hard. But you know, obviously moderation, right? We're back to
Right.
moderation now. We can start bringing some of these other principles back into focus here. You know, if you're allergic to something, obviously you can't eat it.
Right.
But once again, I think it's all about, if you are, especially if it's a family thing, they know that about you, or you let them know that you can't eat certain things, and you just talk about it, and then it doesn't become an issue. But to spring it on somebody, again, it's just a lot of it's common sense, a lot of it's common decency, and if we're leading with love, you know, it's going to be okay. But that's the thing.
Yeah, I think the key line there is, do not render your holiness an offense.
Yes.
You know, and you know, it's kind of like the prodigal son with the good son kind of situation, where you know, his good sonness was held against, you know, he used his goodness and his standards to get in the way of relationship and connection. And it's kind of the same thing, rendering your holiness an offense. I like that line.
I do too.
So William, I have a proposal for you. I think that you should do an overview of each of the 9 numbers on the Enneagram and how each person would approach a meal.
Ooh. I had an Enneagram thought for Jerry earlier.
Oh, you did?
Well, basically, when you prepare that meal for your husband and you gave it to your husband, you're expecting him to, you know, be in this grateful, thankful place. And when he put ketchup on it, that hurt your pride.
Yes, it
And
did.
that-
You're
yeah.
absolutely right. You're
Yeah.
absolutely right. You did. I was all ready for acclamations and, oh, wow, what a wonderful meal, and thank you. And
Yeah.
instead he put ketchup on it.
Yeah. And basically all he was doing is putting ketchup on it. Yeah.
You're right. You're absolutely right. But also back to the point of, you know, knowing somebody, and somebody has, back to that line, your holiness as an offense. You know, we had this discussion before about his ketchup and putting it on everything. So he knew that I was not going to be pleased that he put it on my Thanksgiving dinner. So it wasn't a new thing, but I really do like that. Do not tender your holiness and an offense. I mean, and like when my son-in-law, because like I said, he decided not to eat, he's not eating meat, and that's fine. And he said to me, I'm going to eat the cabbage and I'm going to eat the potatoes, but I'm not going to eat the kibbutzes. And I said, that's fine. I mean, that to me was the relationship, you know, and we exchanged, and he said, you know, please don't be offended, but I am not eating meat. And I'm like, great, but I will eat the rest of it.
Yeah.
Do you have any hot sauce?
Just make sure there's none in the house and you'll be safe.
And I did. I said, I absolutely do not have any hot sauce in the house. But I do have cayenne pepper if you'd like to have that. And so that was the compromise. Keep the relationship, you know?
But if you think about it, this theme is one that Jesus is constantly hammering at with the Pharisees, right? I mean, just about every confrontation that Jesus has with the Pharisees is over this, because they were so obsessed with following the law that they were just bludgeoning the people. And this was just driving Jesus up the wall. And so this is one of the things he's trying to dismantle as he's going through his ministry, is this idea of rendering your holiness an offense. And using it for the exact opposite of what the original intention was of the law or of the practice. And so it's another foundational principle that we need to take a look at. I think we maybe have time for 1 or 2 more. Let's see. Work in the field. A young man crossed the desert and finally came to the monastery of Skidi. There he asked to hear one of the abbot's lectures and was granted permission. That afternoon, the abbot's discourse was about the importance of work in the field. After the lecture, the young man said to one of the monks, "That was amazing. I thought I would hear a fine sermon about virtues and sins, and the abbot spoke only of tomatoes, irrigation, and so forth. Where I come from, all believe that God is merciful. All one must do is pray. The monk smiled and replied, here we believe that God has already done his part. Now it's up to us to continue the process.
I've read that before.
I think that the thing here that really speaks loudest to me is this idea that God has already done his part. And now it's up to us to continue the process. You've probably heard me hammer at this before, you know, especially with respect to the prodigal son that William brought up. When the elder brother is complaining, the father turns to him and says, everything that I have is yours. You know, it's like, what part of everything don't you understand? How can you get more than the everything that has already been given to you? And lessening someone else's part can't give you anything more than the everything that you already have. And the idea here is that God has already made his choice. He's already chosen us. He's already given us from the beginning of the foundations of the universe. He's given everything that there is to give. There is nothing left for God to give. He has withheld nothing. And here we are continuing to pray and to call out and to agonize because we're still looking for that missing piece and petitioning God to let it flow. You know, so much of our language is about breaking the dam of withholding that we imagine God to be doing. But God has already done his part. There's nothing left for God to do. It's only for us now to continue the process, to do our part. And this is something that is so, I think, foundational. When Jesus is talking about that he came to give us life and life abundantly, he's telling us that we're starting from the place of abundance. We're not starting from the place of lack. We're not starting from a place of paucity. You know, it's all here. It's all now. You know, the kingdom is here. We just need to partake. And that is a complete 180-degree game changer, because we always approach life from the place of need, of lack. And we're scratching and scritching and trying to carve out a place for ourselves and always petitioning God for more. But I think God's just smacking his forehead and saying, the table is set. What do you want me to do about it? Obviously, there's a lot more here too about getting down to the basics. You know, the Desert Fathers and Mothers did not spend a lot of time theorizing. They didn't spend time in theology. You know, they weren't these great thinkers. They were very practical men and women, and they found their truth in the dirt, in the fields, in their interactions with each other. And you'll see this over and over again. You know, they're not about fine sermons and greatly complicated theories. It's just about tomatoes and irrigation. You know? It's so simple.
Yeah, it reminds me of the old saying, if you want to clear your head, get your hands dirty, you know, and
Ooh, I like that.
There's something about working in the garden. Like when you're working in the garden, like that's all you're doing. That's it. You're just focused on the garden, you know.
Mm-hmm. All right. Oh, wait.
Oops, too fast.
Okay. Let's look at the next one. Judging my neighbor. One of the monks at Skidi committed a grave error, and the wisest hermit was called upon to judge him. The hermit refused, but they insisted so much that in the end he agreed to go. He arrived carrying on his back a bucket with holes in it, out of which poured sand. I have come to judge my neighbor, said the hermit to the head of the convent. My sins are pouring out behind me, like the sand running from this bucket. But since I don't look back and pay no attention to my own sins, I was called upon to judge my neighbor. The monks called a halt to the punishment immediately. There's going to be story after story, if you actually read The Wisdom of the Desert, on this theme of judgment, you know, and they take it to, at certain points, such extremes. There's one story maybe I can read this story to you right now and see what you think. See if this takes it over the edge for you. There was once a great hermit in the mountains, and he was attacked by robbers. But his cries aroused the other hermits in the neighborhood, and they ran together and captured the robbers. These they sent under guard to the town, to the judge, to put them in jail. But then the brothers were very ashamed and sad, because on their account, the robbers had been turned over to the judge. They went to Abbot Poemen and told him all about it. And the elder wrote to the hermit saying, "Remember who carried out the first betrayal, and you will learn the reason for the second. Unless you had first been betrayed by your own inward thoughts, you would never have ended by turning those men over to the judge." The hermit, touched by these words, got up at once and went into the city, broke open the jail, letting out the robbers and freeing them from torture.
Mm.
Okay, Becky, explain that face.
Ah. Ugh, I think I'm too much this way, but I'm a strong believer in responsibility and consequences. So is this saying that we shouldn't judge anyone, and therefore no one should have to pay a price for any wrongdoing? Is it going that far?
Sounds like it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I don't know, I'm not there yet.
Which was the one you just read, Dave?
This was 37. Do you have the book?
I have the handout you sent me.
Oh, it's not on the handout.
Oh,
It's
right.
this I'm reading from the book. I didn't get this one transcribed over yet. In fact, I was planning on reading this later, but it kind of worked so in such connection with this judging my neighbor. Now, obviously, this monk of Skiri committed a grave error. All right. So he did something that was enough that the entire community felt that he needed some kind of consequences, Becky is talking about. But the elder monk wasn't going to do it. And they end up calling a halt to it completely. Now, this thing, these are robbers. These aren't even part of their community that have attacked this hermit. And yet this idea of, there was remember who carried out the first betrayal, and you will learn the reason for the second. Unless you had first been betrayed by your own inward thoughts, you would never have ended by turning those men over to the judge. And so he's talking about that inward anger, resentment, wanting revenge, or whatever it was that motivated them, or maybe Becky's talking about just the need for justice.
Mm-hmm.
But he's saying if you hadn't given yourself over to that inward condition, then it wouldn't have been acted on outward. And obviously, I think all of us would say that our whole society would break down if we were trying to put these literally into practice in terms of the macro.
Mm-hmm.
But our society would break down if we tried to put the Sermon on the Mount into practice from a legal perspective. It doesn't work. And I think what we have to remember is that these sayings and Jesus' teachings work on a micro basis. They work from the inside out. You cannot hang an institution on them, which is why the Sermon on the Mount has been so befuddling to the church for 2,000 years. And we spend all our time with Paul instead of Jesus, because Paul, you can hang an institution on. Jesus, you can't. Same thing with the Desert Fathers. You can't hang an institution on these men and women. They will defy you at every turn. This is an inward condition that they're talking about. And so I think something like this, we're going to have to take a little more metaphorically and say, okay, what is the inward condition that causes me to want to lash out? It's not that the system isn't going to prosecute the robbers for doing what they did and we have to let that process take place. But what is our inward attitude toward those robbers, even if they have hurt me or hurt the ones that I love? Can we still see them as human beings in need of rehab and this, whatever, it's an inward condition that they're really speaking to. So I agree with you, Becky. This is not something that we can practice as a society, but can we take the principle from it, that idea of not judging, and apply it in a way that does make sense in interpersonal relationships?
It reminds me of how many times have we witnessed Black churches that have been violated either through killings or whatever. We've seen it through the years, and particularly among African Americans, and that so many have this incredible capacity to forgive the perpetrator. And I've always been so impressed with that, and wondering, like, how can they have such heart and compassion to be able to be in that position of such forgiveness? And I think that's what you're referring to, Dave, that the perpetrator still may be in the court system, but that person who has received the hurt on a one-to-one basis is still able to forgive. And that's, I think, more what they must be talking about.
Yeah, well, Becky, like for me, I've always, because hey, have I been hurt? Absolutely. But I realize that if I hold on to it, I'm only hurting myself. The other person, they either may not even know or not even care that they hurt me. So to me, forgiveness has always been not about getting the apology or getting the pound of flesh. It's always been for me about, I'm going to forgive you whether you ask for it or not, because I don't want to hold on to it.
But I think you guys are on the right track here. There's a great story later on, and maybe we'll get to it eventually, where an elder monk has a beautiful set of scripture books that are on fine parchment, and they're calligraphied and all this kind of stuff. And another monk sees them, and when the monk is out, he steals the books and takes them into town to sell them. And he takes them to the vendor, and the vendor says, okay, well, I need to make sure that these are really worth the 16 pence or whatever it is you want for them. So what does he do? He says, I have to get a corroboration on this. He takes them back to the monk that he stole the books from to ask him if these are worth the 16 pence that he's being offered. And the monk says, oh yes, these are very fine books. He knows they're his. These are very fine books. They're certainly worth that much money. So he takes them back and says, okay, I'm willing to buy them from you. And he tells them that he took them to monk, Abbot Abanus or whatever. And of course his whole face changes, and he says, well, did he say anything else? He goes, no, he just said that the books were worth this much. And then he says, well, then I don't want to sell them anymore. And he runs back and he tries to give the books back. And he says, no, I want to give them to you as a gift now. And he says, I could not live with myself if I didn't give these back to you. And then he remains in service to this elder for the rest of his life. It's that kind of attitude, I think, that we're talking about here in terms of cultivating. It's an interior attitude of forgiveness and a way of living with each other, and not taking offense. I mean, not taking offense was a huge precept of these Desert Fathers and Mothers, and something that we don't see as virtue as much today. And so all of these things get wrapped up together. But that's where this is going. And so once again, just like behave like others, we can't take it too far or too literally or generalize too much from it, but it is an interior attitude that we're trying to cultivate.
Dave, it makes me think of like when we see the movie Aladdin, and we see the little thief who is, basically, well, he's stealing to survive, and somehow we don't judge that person. Like we don't even, even though Jafar and the other characters in the movie can label this person as a thief, we in the audience, we feel somehow like we get that person's story, we get their narrative, and we're offended when Jafar calls them a thief. But when we go out into the world and we run into somebody who steals, we act like Jafar would, rather than seeing this diamond in the rough that was Aladdin. Even if the person is not a diamond in the rough, but just, seeing a child of God who is doing bad things.
The hardest thing is to strike the balance, because the macro has to be served. Law has to be served. Otherwise, we lose the group. We lose the ability to live together in any kind of proximity. But on the other hand, we want to keep that exact sort of attitude you're talking about, William, at the same time in the micro. And so it's that balance. Can you still continue to love someone and want the best for them, even as you're prosecuting them? I mean, how does that work? Well, that's what we got to figure out, because maintaining that kind of balance is really what life is all about.
May I add something?
Sure.
What I was thinking about the story of the people that took was it a robber into the town, to the constable?
Yeah.
He immediately broke relationship to deliver him over for punishment and condemnation. And I think we get to discern there's a problem, but I think the condemnation is a drug that feels good and empowering and arrogant, and we get to hurt somebody else so that we don't hurt. And that's different than restorative justice. So it just broke the opportunity for restorative justice by easily condemning and being hostile versus setting a limit and saying, this isn't going to happen, but how come you did it? And what's the possibility for restoration? There was no possibility.
Well put, exactly. How could it have been done differently so that justice is still served, but that there is that restorative nature to it? Well, there really isn't a blanket rule for that. I mean,
No, but I think the anger is a drug.
and you're absolutely
very
right.
seductive.
And I think that's what he was talking about when he's saying the first betrayal was your own inward thoughts. I think that's exactly what he's talking about, Doug. Yeah.
Dave, what I wrote down, what I got from it, what I wrote down is, when I'm judging, I need to look inward to why am I judging, and am I seeing myself? Deflecting, that if I judge you, then I don't have to judge me, but I'm also maybe judging you because I do that. I have that trait, or I've, so I deflect by judging you.
Yeah, I get to kick you, but you don't get to kick me.
You don't get to kick me. So I have to look back at, like you were saying, that, that inward, I got to look inward. Why am I judging this person? And it's that same saying, if, pointing one finger, there's three pointing back at you. I have to look inward. Why are you judging this person? Is this something that you do, or you have, or you've behaved, or whatever? I mean, not that I've robbed people, but you know what I mean. So that's what I got out of it. That's what I wrote down.
That's good. That's good. Simple little stories, but 50 words, 60 words, and yet they're carrying huge principles. And that's the whole point of the Desert Father stories, is those principles that you can glean out of them that are really going to work from the inside out. So, well, I think it's getting really late on the East Coast, and it's probably time to let you guys go to bed. But this is a good one. This is a good one. So we just kind of got started. There's lots more. So we'll keep this going for a couple of weeks. We'll try to keep this going as long as we can to give Becky a chance to get back so she doesn't miss too much of falling upward. Absolutely. All right. Hey, Scotty, can you close us in prayer, please?
Absolutely. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time of sharing and learning and really seeking to dig out the truths behind these paragraphs and these written down accounts, people who paid great price to find a relationship with you and with each other in the community. Help us to have the wisdom and discernment where, when, and how to act and how to react when somebody commits an offense around us. Make sure we're not responding out of something triggered inside us or something that we never dealt with. So let us just have mental clarity, Lord. Have the wisdom that comes from your throne room that allows us to navigate these situations and circumstances, and let us remember and not forget that the highest calling is to do what we do and do it with love in our hearts, to leave the person absolutely better than when we found him, just as you do with us every day, Lord. We love you, Jesus. It's in your holy, precious name we pray. We give our thanks and say our amens. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thanks, everybody.
Bye,
Becky, have a
everyone.
great trip. All right.
Becky, good
Bye. Bye,
See you guys
Georgina.
soon.
You'll be in our
Night,
program.
Night,
Have a great
everybody.
trip.
Yeah, William's ready to
you.
go to sleep.
Bye,
Becky,
all.
have a great trip. We'll be
Bye.
thinking of
Guys.
you.
Okay, good night.
Good night,
Good
everyone.
night. Good night, everybody.
Night, all.
Good night, Frank. Good night, Becky, Jordana,
Bye,
and
Becky.
Linda.
Have a safe trip.
Thank you. Bye, Jordana.
Bye,
Bye-bye.
Linda. Bye, Dave.
See you.
See ya.